Welcome to the I Now Pronounce You Divorced podcast, where we have three award-winning family law attorneys dive into intriguing topics like divorce, military divorce, custody and visitation, trust and estate planning, and all things family law. Join us as we provide a comprehensive viewpoint through the eyes of our experts and guests, aiming to educate and soothe our listeners. Get ready to tune in because I Now Pronounce You Divorced starts right now.
Hi, I'm Charles Hatley with Malone Hatley PC, and this is our podcast, I Now Pronounce You Divorced, where each week we talk about certain things or we see our clients going through or that really interested us or things that we had to look up ourselves. Today, I'm joined by Dan Cuneo, and what we wanted to talk about was something our clients went through last weekend. So we had a client who had a order of protection, a protective order against their spouse, say they couldn't come into the house. And we had gone and actually gotten a temporary order in conjunction with that protective order of protection, a temporary order that said that our client also had exclusive use and possession of the marital home, meaning that even once the protective order would expire, there was still a court order saying that the other spouse couldn't come into the marital home. So the protective order expired. The other spouse went and contacted the police. The police come to the home of our client over the weekend and say, you have to let your spouse in the home. And our client said, look, I've got this order from the court that says I get exclusive use possession of the home. Police said, we don't care. You've got to let your spouse into the home. And as many of us would do, the client was doing the best they could to listen to the police, and they let the spouse in the home. And the spouse did kind of what we expected, the reason the court ordered the exclusive use of possession, and went and got on the couch and started stealing things like the spouse had done in the past. And, there was a whole host of trouble caused by the police giving what was advice contrary to the court's order. So we wanted to talk about, during your divorce and even after your divorce, what is a good role for the police in your civil matter? So Dan, can you kind of walk us through what the clients can expect from the police in cases of civil divorce orders or other types of civil orders?
Sure. I'm glad we're talking about this because it comes up a lot, whether you're going through a divorce or you are divorced or even contemplating divorce. And, the police are there for your protection and safety, and they really want to diffuse the situation. But for clients, sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating because as the example you were given, this particular individual had a temporary order. And then it just maybe because of some administrative issue with a date, the police came in and they thought, okay, well, this person contacted us. They needed back in their house. And so we're going to let them in, and not knowing all the legalities behind it. And so they're just trying to keep the peace and allow someone who may or may not be allowed in their house, but they're going on what that person is saying. And so each situation is going to be different, but I would break it down like this, to where if you have an order and it's an active order and it hasn't expired, and a police officer shows up with that ex-spouse or potential ex-spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case may be, show them the order. 9 out of 10, the police officer will read the order and they'll see it signed by a judge and that it's still active, and they'll move away from the premises with that other person. But if there's some question, then you may want to have your title there and show the officer, well, this person's name isn't on the title. They don't have any right or interest to be here. And so technically that could be trespassing. And so maybe the officer will allow that person to either go in or not go in. And then you can even say, listen, I don't feel comfortable here. I fear for my safety is in jeopardy. And you don't have to go into every reason, but usually it's those kind of buzzwords to where if you say, I just don't feel safe with this person around, then the police officer hopefully won't allow that person in. But if they do, just document it and have the police officer issue a report. And they won't issue one that day, most likely, but request one to be written about the incident that was happening. If you have an attorney, call them, maybe get them on speakerphone. So if it's on the weekend, sometimes it's a little bit tough, but record what's going on and let the police officer know that you're recording this, because each state's going to be different as far as when you can record and permissions that you need. But I would just say, no, listen, I'm going to record what's going on. And if the police officer says no, then you know that something's really not right, and you want to just continue to document it. And if you feel unsafe or that your life is in danger or your safety could be compromised, then leave the premises. but contact your attorney if you have one. If not, then you want to just document everything and go to the police station and talk to someone there and say, listen, I need to file a report, because you want to make that as the basis of your claim to either extend what you have or to supplement what you have. And then contact an attorney. At the end of the day, no matter what the situation is, you want to make sure that you're talking to someone.
You do. And, in this case, what even made it more peculiar is we had contacted the local precinct where the home was located and let them know, hey, there's a protective order. And we also have this temporary order for exclusive use of possession that lasts for the entirety of the divorce. And we put them on notice. And they still ushered the spouse back into the home. And the spouse, the reason the judge ordered exclusive use of possession was a heavy drug user coming in and stealing things all time of day and night on drugs and being very erratic. And so there was a fear for safety. And in this particular case, the attorney was like, what else could I have done? It kind of comes, the question that arose to me was, did the client even have to let the police in? Does the client have to open the door? Now, that gets into criminal law, right? And I don't really want to jump off into criminal, but I know that when I was younger, my dad always told me, if the police come to your door, don't answer. Especially, when I was getting ready to go to college and, be at college parties and maybe be under 21 for a while. He's like, don't answer the door for the police. Don't be dumb. Don't give them a reason to come in. And so that always stuck to me. It wasn't legal advice. My father wasn't an attorney, but it was just advice, right? If the police don't have any reason to be on your property, you can say, hey, what do you want? We want to let your spouse in. Maybe I'm not going to open the door for that. You don't have a search warrant. Can't come in. What do you think about that, Dan?
I think it in those situations, as long as you're diplomatic and polite and respectful, I would agree. Just say, listen, I have an order. I can show you through my door. Here it is. And I'm not comfortable letting this person in my house. And if the officer is insisting on allowing this person in, just say no. I mean, you're right. As you were talking, the first thing I thought of was, where's the warrant? Do you have a warrant to enter in my premises? It is a little bit cumbersome because now they're going to have to go back and you may be escalating the situation, but you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself at the end of the day. And if you do not feel comfortable or safe, I agree. Don't let them in. You don't have, just because a police officer shows up and knocks on your door does not mean that you have to allow them into your premises. Now, if they have a search warrant, yes, because then you're obstructing their ability to perform the job and it could be obstruction of justice. But in this situation, if there isn't a search warrant, it's just the police officer acting in good faith because he or she received a call and has nothing to do with you personally, then you can say, no, listen, I don't feel comfortable. I have a court order. If the police officer wants to see it, then you can slide in a door or show it to them. You could open the door and hand it to them. I wouldn't imagine a situation where they'd barge in, but just to prevent a situation from escalating, you can just show them through the door. And then if they're insistent, just say, you have to come back with a search warrant, close the door, and then call an attorney or call your attorney if you have one. And then I would just continue, as we've been talking, just document everything. Unfortunately, it's just going to be based upon documentation. But in our unique case that we had a court order that said exclusive possession. So I would think that other side, the spouse, knew that there was a valid court order and that our client had exclusive possession. So he was essentially violating that court order because he had knowledge of it. And then you're talking about contempt issues. And so there's these things that can happen. There's remedies available. Hopefully you don't have to go down that road. But in family law, it all really boils down to documentation.
It does. And, when I heard this case, I kind of remembered something from my personal life. My wife and I had dogs and we had gone out to dinner and we had just moved into this house and it had a doggy door. And the dogs obviously went out the doggy door and they stood out there and barked the entire time we were at dinner. And so the neighbors, being the neighborly place that we were living in, called the police. And the police showed up and I had a Ring doorbell. So the police showed up and I saw them. I was like, hey, wait, what's up? And as soon as I said, what's up, they opened the glass door, the storm door, and then put their hand on the other door to try to come in. And I was like, yeah, guys, I'm not there. And I just remember that because it was on the Ring video. And I was like, wow, if I had been there and slightly opened that door, these people were coming on in to see what was going on without a warrant. There was just a dog barking in the backyard at 4:00 in the afternoon because I ate dinner early. That's it. And they were willing to open the door and actually make that motion to come in. And I was glad I had the Ring doorbell. And at that point in time, I was like, well, I guess, I'll just talk to people through my Ring doorbell, keep my door locked. which is also good advice. So, that's when we're on the right side of the law, right? We have the orders in place, the police come and that. And I was reading an article the other day from Orange County, California. And it was about the fact that apparently, with this push to have both parents very, very involved during the divorce proceedings, that there is a blind eye turned to allegations of abuse during the divorce proceedings. So, for custody visitation situations, what's happening is one spouse may be abusing the children. The other spouse has to send the children back to this abusive situation. And as practitioners, we've all had that case where there's a custody visitation order, there's some abuse happening, and we're trying to get into court to stop the visitation, but the visitation is still court ordered. What do you tell your clients about, we can't never tell our clients to not follow a court order, but occasionally we get clients to say, look, I'm not doing this. What do you tell your clients the police can do in that situation when they show up to the house?
If we're on the side to where we have the child and the spouse is the alleged abuser, I advise the clients, you have this court order, but in most states, at least the ones I'm licensed in, look out for the best interest of the child. And if you think that the child's life or safety is in jeopardy, it could be compromised, then you have the right as a parent to deny that time. But I advise the clients, call the police, get it documented, call your attorney, or if you don't have an attorney, then just make sure you're calling the police, have a report issued so you can document every step of the way. And if there's a guardian ad litem involved, make sure you're contacting the guardian ad litem too right away in real time. And then even send a message, whether it's an email or a text message, to the other parent and say, listen, I don't feel comfortable allowing my child or children around you for X, Y, and Z reasons. And therefore, they're not going to be with you today. But make sure that you're confident in how you feel and not using it as a weapon against them. Because if it's unfounded or you're just using this as a way to gain an unfair advantage, then the courts are going to come down very heavy on you, and it's going to be a bad situation to where your time with the children could be limited. Now, if I'm on the other side and my client is the alleged abuser and the other spouse is not allowing time, then I just advise the client, show up. If they're not going to release the kids, document that you were there, call the police, document that, send that spouse a message saying, I'm here, you're denying me my time, and I want to see my kids. And then if they still deny the time, leave, because you don't want to create a situation, and then contact your attorney if you have one, or contact the guardian line if you have one. Because unfortunately, if it happens on the weekend, you may have to wait until Monday to address anything. But if it's during the week, there may be remedies available that your attorney could get you into court right away, to where you could file an emergency motion for you to see the kids. In some jurisdictions, and in one where I'm licensed, you can file what's called a family access motion, and you get in fairly quickly as opposed to just filing an emergency motion. And then the court's going to look at what was going on, was in the best interest of the child, was the child really put in danger. And there's several factors that each state will look at that are statutory, that they have to look at to make sure that the kids are protected. And then if it is founded, then that's good if you're the one who's trying to protect the kids. But if you're the one that's the alleged abuser, then there's other things that we can talk through as far as what can you do to overcome that. But at the end of the day, if you do not feel that the children are going to be safe, you don't want to put them in harm's way. And so just call the police and document. But if you're the alleged abuser, the exact same thing, but know that you may not see your child or children that day. You may have to wait in order to see them, but then you could get compensatory time, which is really just makeup.
It's tough, regardless of what side you're on, because, the police are, if you're being denied time, generally in the jurisdictions I'm licensed in, the police will not walk into the house, grab the children, and drag them over to the other parent. If you're worried that the children are suffering abuse, you need to be proactive. It can't be, I sat back, my child came back and told me that there was abuse happening, or I saw signs of abuse, and then I waited till next visitation to say, no, I think there's going to be abuse. Talk to your attorney. Let's get a plan together. Let's contact the police, create a police report. And then let's go and file a motion for modification based off that police report, if there really is abuse, and get the process started. That way, if you deny the visitation, maybe the court will say, look, the abuse was unfounded, but at least we see why you did it, versus, calling the police and, having the child say, oh yeah, no, mom wanted me to say this or dad wanted me to say this. You're going to get in some trouble. But it's good to remember on both sides, the police are not going to come into the house and take the child. The police are going to say some very strong words sometimes. I've had both ways, right? I've had police officers tell my clients very clearly, look, I can't do anything, man. I wish I could. I'm sorry. My client's being denied visitation. Like, here's my report. Here's my cell phone number. I will show up to court and testify for you. I've also had them say to the parent denying the visitation, look, if you do this, we're going to come in and do it. They did. So it is tough understanding, especially because all this stuff happens on the weekend, right? Usually. It never happens when it's very convenient. What about when, you have situations where you have spouses that are living together, or you have partners that are living together, and the police, there's some sort of incident and the police show up and tell one person to leave. What do you advise your client in that situation if your client's the one being told to leave?
That's tough, because you could potentially be having your client in an unfair advantage to where they are leaving the property. And usually when you leave, it's hard to get back in. But if the police are called, because at the end of the day, the police are really there for everyone's protection, safety, and to try to diffuse. And they're just going on what they're seeing and what they're hearing. And a lot of times they have to act quickly because they want to be a little bit more cautious and more conservative. And we respect that. But when you're representing the client that's asked to leave, that's tough, because you don't want to say no to the police, because then they could put you in jail because you're not following their direction. It could really just escalate more. And if there's kids involved, then I just would say leave, but then you can come back the next day and come back, because you're just really diffusing the situation. But make sure you come back. If the police officer is saying you have to leave and you're going to be out of here for an indeterminate amount of time, well, then you have to contact an attorney, because they don't have the authority to do that. They can't say you have to leave the premises today and you can never come back, or you can't come back for a certain amount of time. That really has to be ordered by a judge. And if you're in that situation, the smart thing to do is just leave, but then document, as we've been talking about, and then you can go back the next day, because nothing's preventing you. Now, I say that with caution, because the police were called for something. Something happened that either you or the other spouse thought, okay, wait a second, I don't feel comfortable here. So be careful when you go back. But I caution clients that when they go back, just kind of be on your best behavior. But I would say in that situation, it's time to get a lawyer involved, because I always am suspicious when clients come to me and say, my spouse called the police and asked me to leave. Unless you're really abusing that other side, then yeah, of course, we don't want anyone to be subjected to that. But usually, in my experience as a practitioner representing the alleged abusers, it's a move to be proactive on their side to try to get some type of advantage. And that's when we need to come in and say, well, wait a second, we need to level this playing field. This is really what's going on, Judge. And then we can have discussions. But I always say, if the police are asking you to leave, just leave for the night, leave for the day, and come back. But follow the police's direction, because it will usually snowball and morph into something a little bit more severe than what you're anticipating.
It is. And, everything we're talking about, really about what the police can do doesn't mean what you should do, right? You don't want to take a situation where you're like, well, you don't have the right to make me leave my house, and turn it into a situation where all of a sudden you're getting arrested in front of your children. That's not good either. For me, I was, as you were talking, I remembered a case that I had where my client was asked to leave the home. The police did, in our jurisdiction, generally, the police tell both sides, like, look, if there's been family violence, you can go down to the magistrate's office, you can file for a protective order. And the other side did. And the other side filed a protective order, but my client had recorded everything. Just like you were talking about, we had given that advice, record everything. And so we showed up for the protective order hearing, and it was dismissed. And she had to pay all of my attorney's fees. And she was like, but the police told me to file a protective order. And we had the police officers that were on the scene. They're like, no. We told you that you could file a protective order if there's been family abuse. So in that instance, the police had done the right thing, no doubt about it. And the other side had really fudged the story as far as she possibly could on the abuse. But she ended up having to pay attorney's fees. And so that's also a big warning in this. Have you had situations like that?
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, we see it all the time where there may be a misunderstanding, or they're taking something literally to where they're not really putting a lot of thought behind it, and they're filing frivolous actions with the court, which for my clients, it's unfortunate because a lot of times, at least in like in your example where I'm licensed at, my client wouldn't be able to see the child or kids for a certain period of time because they would be prevented. And then you come in and you show to the court, well, this motion was filed frivolously, and now my client's missed out on time. And it's great that you have remedies to pay attorney's fees, but you can get makeup time, and that's something you definitely want to ask. But that lost time is lost time. At the end of the day, no matter how we slice it, you're still missing out on quality time with your kids, and it's not fair. And we need to point that out as quickly and as swiftly as possible. And in your case, I mean, it's great that there was sage advice given to record and to be able to preserve it so we can get into court and show the judge, listen, this is what really happened. And the other side's just using this as a weapon against my client. For at the end of the day, it's not fair because my client now missed out on quality time with the kids. And so I'm happy that it was dismissed, but also we want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And in a lot of jurisdictions, if the other side continues to file these motions, then they can be sanctioned. And it's sanctioned with attorney's fees, it's sanctioned with the potential change in visitation or custody, and even potential jail time if they're a habitual offender of filing these types of motions.
It's very interesting, when we're going through divorce, understanding the working with our clients to understand the consequence of not only what's happening in the courtroom, but also what's going to happen in the real world and what they have available to them in the real world, like the police, and how the police are going to handle these situations. And like you said, the police are doing their best to do their job, which is to defuse situations. Their job is not to interpret civil court orders.
Right.
And it's very important to remember that, because a lot of people want to get mad and say, well, the police did this wrong. No. They actually did it very, very right. They diffused the situation. Their job was not to interpret a court order. So, if you enjoyed this conversation, join us each week as we talk about different scenarios that we come up with. If you or somebody is going through divorce, give us a call and see the difference that a partner can make. Malone Hatley PC, we are your partner for divorce. And, subscribe to our newsletter in the link below, and subscribe to our podcast so that we can join you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. If you found this episode helpful and you want more informational content, please be sure to subscribe and join us on all major social media platforms, including YouTube. Stay connected for more exciting updates and tips.